in Germany, Bayern Munich, they got it done against Celtic in Glasgow. The question is, will they get it done against Celtic when they play at home? This was significant, Andy, because Bayern Munich haven't been winning away from home. And they went to Glasgow, which I imagine was quite a fiery atmosphere for them to be in any case.
Exactly. And Celtic were on a great run at home as well. And they've really got back the fierceness of what Celtic Park is on a European night. Of course, they had that really dry run for a really long time, and they've made it a proper fortress again this season. I think people looked at it and thought when it came out of the hat and thought, well, okay, it's easy for Bayern. It's not easy for Bayern because, as you say, on the road in the Champions League, not great. You think of them getting hammered at Barcelona, losing at Aston Villa, then losing 3-0 at Feyenoord, although I've watched that game a number of times because I can't understand how they lost it still. And, what Joshua Kimmich said about that, about, we have to manage expectations. Are we actually that level anymore? Which I think is a fair question, isn't it?
Incredibly accurate. I didn't think they were going to hammer Celtic by any means. This Bayern isn't the same Bayern of yesteryear. With all the big figures, what you'd associate with Bayern, and this is a completely different team now. And I don't think there is that fear factor for teams anymore facing them in Europe. They're obviously a big side. They're an absolute giant. Of course they are. But I don't think if you're a team facing Bayern Munich, you're not particularly intimidated by them. Who are you intimidated by on that team?
Well, I suppose like Harry Kane is the obvious one, right? But I think... they're growing into something pretty special. I think if you look at the front four that they went in with against Celtic, of Kane, Sané, Musiala, Elise, you think, okay, this is going to be a long night for Celtic. What I think is so interesting, though, is despite having all those weapons and, what they can bring off the bench as well, you look at Coman, who's looked the most settled he's looked in a few years, Serge Gnabry, other players, you think, okay, well, what they did really well, we know they can get at teams going forward. But what we didn't really expect, what we've got under Vincent Kompany, is a team that can actually defend. Now, that's not been apparent, though, in those away games in the Champions League. No. You look at the Feyenoord games, a case in point, really. They have loads of the game, they have loads of shots, don't take any of their chances, and just get sucker punched. And there was always a possibility that Celtic could do that to them because Celtic are exceedingly strong at home and have come a long way in Europe after, as we said,
they were allowed back in the game. I thought Celtic were allowed back in the game, and I'm seeing this a lot from Bayern. 70th, 80th minute, they just bring it down a few levels, and I think they allow the opponent a few opportunities.
Do you think that's because of the subs? Because actually, once Elise goes off, partly maybe they're 2-0 up, maybe they're managing it, they've got a very heavy schedule. I don't think Kompany would be abnormal in thinking, okay, we've got Leverkusen at the weekend, we've got this one in the bag, maybe we should change it up and freshen it up a little bit. Because, Elise is absolutely top class at the moment.
Phenomenal.
Brilliant opening goal as well. But I think what they did really well, I guess the flip side of what you're saying, David, is bear in mind, Celtic have the ball in the net in the first 30 seconds. Nicholas Kuhn scores that goal really early on, and Adam Eders stood in front of Neuer in an offside position, so it doesn't count correctly. So you look at that, and then you look at the last half hour where, as you say, the rhythm of Bayern drops, and they really have to batten down the hatches in the last 10 minutes to hang on to the result. But they successfully do it. I think that's really important because they haven't really looked like doing that in another away game. Now, if we're talking about the difference between them being good, which they are, being improved under Kompany, which they are, and being a genuine contender for the trophy, which I'm not quite sure if they are, that gets you a little bit closer to making you believe in clause 3, I think.
Yeah, I need to have a lot more convincing about Bayern. Again, there's probably a bit of a theory against Celtic, like, and you just touched on it there. I think that they were perhaps preparing for the Leverkusen game. A little bit of rotation, get some fresh legs in there for this is such a big game for them. But I just still see them, and this is despite the defensive record as well. It just still seems a little bit vulnerable in Europe when they're facing teams. I really do. I think they might get punished by teams with a lot more quality, especially when Celtic are allowed the amount of space and amount of time that they had. So.
Yeah, I wonder if the defensive depth is an issue as well. I mean, you think they went into that game at Celtic last night with a back four of Lima, not really a fullback, Guerrero, plays fullback a bit, but not really a fullback, more of an inside left midfielder. And then you've got Upamecano, who...
Man of the match. We criticised him a lot, but he was very good last night.
He was, but you never know what you're going to get with him.
Precisely, especially in the Champions League as well. His collection of horrors down there.
And he still nearly gave away a pen. And then you've got Eric Dyer next to him, who, like, highline Eric Dyer. He's had a great time in the last year, but I think he might need a segue to get through the last bit of his contract. I think you look at that, and there's just that little bit of vulnerability.
This is what I mean about intimidating. This is why I'm thinking you see that team sheet go down, and you're in Europe, and PSG are looking at that, or Real Madrid are looking at that, and go, "Wow, I know they've got that defensive record, but that back four, we can get at that."
Yeah, I think there were too many games against the best opposition, and you look what Barcelona, as we said before, always lose to Bayern. And they absolutely took them to bits at Montjuic. It was the ultimate jinx. And then they were fearless. Barcelona have played a lot of great football in the Champions League so far this season. And they absolutely took them to bits. I was there that night, and it was one of those ones where you thought the only way that they had any chance in that game is if Manuel Neuer had the absolute night of his life. And I kind of feel in recent years in the Champions League, and they are better defensively than they have been in recent years by them. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people would have expected Kompany to fix, which he has gone a long way to fixing. There have been too many games in recent years where you're expecting, you need A+ level Neuer to get yourself out of this. You think of the Real Madrid semi last year. I mean, they had that in the bag at the Bernabeu because Neuer was having one of those classic nights right up until the moment he didn't. And when he made that mistake, let Real Madrid back in the game and it was all over, it shouldn't be hanging all on him at his age, should it?
And I still think, and that Barcelona game was a good insight into this, what I think their midfield is still too slow. And I think if you play a bit intensely against them, say you take Vitinha for PSG against that Bayern midfield, I think you'll run them ragged.
But do you think I think Kompany maybe recognises that, because it's interesting. Obviously, Palhinha wasn't fit enough to be involved last night at Celtic, but he's since the beginning, and you think Kompany has preferred Alexander Pavlovic to Palhinha, which is really interesting to me, because if you think for two successive transfer windows, Bayern did everything they could to get Joao Palhinha in the door. I thought, he's the guy we're missing. I think he's a really great defensive midfielder, but if you're talking about that extra mobility, he's a really good player. Yeah. He's not elite mobility, I don't think.
No, he's got limitations.
Pavlovic can get about the pitch more than him. Now, I guess if you stick him next to Kimmich, I think that's quite an interesting combo. Of course, they've got Kimmich and Goretzka in there at the moment. Goretzka, brilliant on his day, but the fitness is so fragile. Yeah. So, I mean, I do get the sense, as you say, that Kompany is still looking about for the solution to that.
Yeah, this week, as important as it is, what difference will it make to Bayern's season? Because they've got Leverkusen, but they're way ahead of Leverkusen, aren't they? So whatever the result is, they will still be at the top of the Bundesliga and arguably still on the front foot in that respect. And then in the Champions League, you expect them to beat Celtic on the return match.
Yes.
In Munich, you would have thought so.
But I think it is still big because it's psychologically huge, the game against Leverkusen at the weekend. Now, it's an 8-point gap at the moment, which is bigger than you would have expected a couple of weeks ago. And so, obviously, there's a sense that the pressure is on Leverkusen. Whereas if we go back a couple of weeks, if Leverkusen just don't lose that's fine. Now you have the feeling, maybe looking at the table, maybe Leverkusen need to go and win it. I mean, they definitely can't lose it. There's no doubt about that, because this is the point. This is why it's so big, because Bayern can go there make a statement against a team that they do consider a genuine rival, and rightly so, because Leverkusen are a great side. They can go there. If they win the game, the title's stitched up.
Yeah.
In February, they'll be 11 points ahead. And that gives them such freedom to develop the aspects of their game that David was talking about that they need to go there and close this game out against Celtic. There's such a collective sigh of relief in Bayern that, okay, we've got this away in the Champions League monkey off our backs, and now we can really face this week and do what we need to do. Because honestly, if you look at Bayern, even in their weaker moments of recent years, the biggest matches seem to bring the best out of them, generally speaking.